Hey everyone, I just wanted to try this out. I have watched hundreds of videos and many channels about infertility journeys, and I just thought that it might help someone else if I share mine. So I'm Jessica, and this is my husband Eric.
Hi.
We have been married for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Yep, 5 years. So this journey has been a lot longer than 5 years. So I'm just going to start from the beginning, and then as this journey gets hopefully not much longer, I can just do smaller videos after this one. So all of this started when I was in middle school, and I went to my very first. When I went to that appointment, it was just like meeting the doctor and the discussion of getting on birth control because I started my very first cycle in middle school. My mom has a severe history of endometriosis, so we sort of knew from that point that I was more than likely going to have that, and that if I got on birth control, it would maybe slow down the process so it wouldn't be quite as severe. So they started me on birth control. Like the lowest dose, I don't even remember the name of it, but it was the circular pill pack, whatever. I was on that for a very long time, and then they started changing it because after so long, your body kind of gets used to it. So I was on every pill that I've ever heard of, I was on. I was on the NuvaRing, which was a really weird experience. Don't recommend that one. I was on the patch. Another weird experience, and I think that was the last one I was on, was the patch. Because I think that's right. Okay, so then, let's see. Did all of the weird cycles start after we were married or before we were married? After. Were we here? No, it was before we were here.
It was before.
So it may have been right before we got married. I started having a cycle that lasted like months.
Forever. Like,
it did not have a day where I wasn't bleeding. It was not heavy, but it was bleeding every single day. That lasted for a year, an entire year, every single day having it. Okay, so then
leave it.
We get married, still on the patch. We decide that when we get back from our honeymoon, which we went on a cruise, that I would just stop taking birth control and see if everything leveled out kind of on its own. Well, that didn't happen. I just kept bleeding. I would have terrible bleeding all the time. I would have terrible headaches. Pain was ungodly. So I knew it had to be endometriosis. So I sort of had the diagnosis without it being like proven that I had it. So I went to a doctor. He basically said, this is what you have. You need to there's really nothing we can do, just stay on the birth control, whatever. Well, I started gaining weight, and I just didn't feel good ever, so I went to a new doctor, and they did all kinds of blood work, and he pretty much said that everything was happening because my thyroid was extreme. When I say extreme, it was like a 14 or 15, like that was the number, and it was supposed to be like a single-digit number. So it was extreme. So it puts me on Synthroid, I think was what it was called, like the lowest dose. And he said, you're going to need a high dose. We're going to have to work it up. We'll give you a little bit at a time. You'll come in every so many weeks, and we'll do a blood work, and we'll give you more until it levels out. Okay, great. We finally found something that's going to stop this bleeding. I go back in a couple of weeks to have a scan to see, or a blood draw to see if the level had changed any or if it was time to come up on the dose. Normal. My thyroid was normal. Nothing was wrong, and he said that dose is working great. It's the lowest dose you can get, and it's working. It was like 0.25. It's the lowest dose you can get, and it's working great. Everything's going to be fine. Okay? Well, I feel no different, and I'm taking it, whatever. So I decided to change doctors. No. Back up. I tell him I don't feel any different. He said, well, we're kind of at a fence, and one side means you just kind of keep going with bleeding and we do nothing, and the other side is this is what he said, I give you medicine, and in 2 weeks you'll be pregnant. Well, I wasn't pursuing that. It was kind of like when it happens, but I was working full time, and I was going to school full time to get my master's, and I just wasn't there yet. I just wanted to know why I was bleeding all the time, and what can we do to stop the pain. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to discuss it with my husband, and I'll call you. I changed doctors. Back to my original doctor that my mom was with forever. He sort of knew the family history. Maybe he can help me now that we finally got a path with the thyroid. He tests my thyroid. I send all of my lab from the other doctor over. He tells me, yes, it was extreme, but it's fine now, and I think you should come off of the Synthroid and let's test it with no medicine, and let's see how it goes. Okay, so I come off of it. I wait the whatever time it was, and I go get blood work. Normal, without medicine. Nothing's wrong. Everything's fine with you. There's nothing we can do. The best thing you can do is to get pregnant. Okay, fine. So time goes by, and I go back for like my normal yearly, and my mom happened to have an appointment on the same day, and I don't know if you know all of these details, but you're about to find out. You're not going to like it. Tells me he's not discussing my thyroid with me at that appointment. He tells my mom this in the other room. Not discussing the thyroid with her. He comes in, I mention it, he completely ignores what I have said about my thyroid. No, I know something is wrong, and I want someone to tell me what it is. Then he says, do you know what THC is? And I said, well, in my head, I'm like, well, I think that's marijuana, but I'm not. Is that what he's asking me? Am I mixing it up with something else? And so I said, no. It's what you get when it's what's in marijuana. And I was like, oh, well, yeah. Well, if your husband does any kind of drugs, including marijuana, and has THC, then you're never going to get pregnant. Never has ever met him, ever, and accused him of being a drug addict at the appointment. So I go into the room, my mom's in, and pretty much I was just trying to get out of there because I was so upset. So I leave, I tell her what was said, and I decide I'm not going back because of the way I was just treated. You don't care what's happening. You're pretty much telling me that everything that's happening to me is normal and nothing's going to change. Still bleeding all the time. Okay, so I sort of give up. I don't go back to the doctor. Whole year goes by, not pursuing anything with my thyroid. I think I went to a couple of clinics here and there just to have it randomly checked. Completely normal every single time. So I decided to go back to the doctor that offered me, or said that I had the thyroid issue, and offered me the medicine to get pregnant in 2 weeks, which, looking back now, I know exactly what he was talking about. I have my normal pap done, go about my business. I get something for headaches. I had seen a neurologist because I thought that something was wrong. All of that was fine. I was diagnosed with migraines, whatever. Well, then I find out that I'm pregnant, and I wasn't tracking cycles. I was bleeding all the time. The only reason I took a pregnancy test was because we were going out with friends, and I wasn't bleeding, which is not normal at all. I was 2 days I wasn't bleeding. I had been at work. Felt completely fine. I think my boobs were a little sore, but the reason I took the test is because we were going out with friends and I wasn't bleeding. And I thought, well, if I'm going to go out with friends and have a good time, then I need to take a test just to make sure, which was normal for me. I took them all the time just to make sure because I never knew I was bleeding all the time. Well, it was positive. So I have to wait a little while for my insurance to work out to go to the doctor. The very first appointment, I was 6 weeks at my first appointment.
Yeah, I think.
And we had an ultrasound. We saw the baby. Super excited. Got all these pictures. We go into the doctor's office, and he pretty much didn't have a whole lot of good to say. He said that the heart rate was
through the roof.
No, it wasn't. That was the problem.
No,
it was under 100.
Yours was through the roof.
Mine was my blood pressure and everything was high the entire time. Okay, so then he says that I not only have the baby not only has a low heart rate, but I have 2 cysts. I have one on my left ovary I may have the ovaries mixed up. One on my left ovary that will burst and go away on its own, and I had one on my right ovary that he called a dermoid cyst, and that it would not go away, and I would have to have it surgically removed depending on how fast it grew. Okay, so I'm like super freaked out about it because he tells me, that's the kind that grows hair and teeth and looks like a person, and just super scary. So whatever. We leave that appointment, trying to stay super positive. Went ahead and made an announcement and told everyone because no matter what happened, good or bad, I didn't want people to not know. And I do not regret that decision, and I never will, because the support that I got was unbelievable, and I would never change it for a second. So I go in for another appointment. Things look better. That was a week later. So it was 7.5 weeks, roughly. Things were better. I left the appointment and I went to work. Heart rate was up. It wasn't 100, but I think it was 98. The cyst had not grown. Of course, it had only been a week, but whatever. And he was hopeful and let me go for 2 weeks, that I could go for 2 weeks without an appointment. So go from the appointment back to work, feeling great about it. Well, the next appointment comes. I take the whole day because it was at a weird time. I couldn't do just half a day, whatever. Well, the day before the appointment, I worked, and I left work early because I was bleeding. And I spotted every single day of my pregnancy. Wasn't nothing crazy, but it started getting heavy on this day before this appointment. I knew that my appointment was the next morning at it's like 9 or 10, but we got there super early because I was so worried. So I was up all night bleeding, heavy, bright red blood. So I knew something was wrong. So I get to the appointment. I just waited out because I knew in just a few hours I would be going to the doctor and just finding out what was going on. So we get up for the appointment. We get there, and they tell me I need to calm down because my blood pressure was through the roof. I don't even know what it was, but it was high enough for the nurse asked if she could pray with me right there in the office, the waiting room. So she takes me to ultrasound. I did not go to a single appointment by myself, and I don't know that I ever will. And as soon as I had to have a vaginal ultrasound because she didn't see anything. As soon as she put it in, I knew, because I was supposed to be almost 10 weeks. It was 9 weeks and 7 or 6 days. It was almost 10 weeks. I knew that I should see something more, and I should be able to, I don't know. But as soon as she put it in, you could see that there was a baby, and there was sitting at the very bottom, and she moved it around for it felt like forever, but it was probably only a couple minutes. And she said, there is a baby, but there isn't a heartbeat. So she said, I need you to get dressed, and we're going to go see the doctor. So, of course, fall apart right there in the room, and we go to the doctor's office, and he lets us use his personal office to sort of sit there. And he said, I thought things were getting better, and I thought it was going to turn around, and unfortunately that didn't happen. So he said, you have the option to miscarry at home, or you can, we can do the D&C. And immediately I said, I want to do the D&C. I can't do this at home. I just could not emotionally do it. And while he was in there, I said, while I'm never had surgery, just put me to sleep, do the D&C, and then you can go ahead and take the cyst out. That's not going to go away. He was like, okay, that sounds good. We can do that. So we scheduled it for just a couple of days later. It was on Halloween, 2016. So we go in super early for that appointment. I wake up, and I am poor. I would describe it as a hemorrhage. That's how heavy I was bleeding. And I go in and she asks if she takes me to change, and I tell her, I'm bleeding super heavy, and the nurse didn't understand what I meant, so I said, well, come look. I went into the bathroom, she helped me change, and it was so heavy that they gave me like the hospital depends because it was so bad. So go back for the surgery, and as far as I know, that went just fine. And did he tell you anything before I woke up?
They found endometriosis.
Oh yeah, they burned all the endometriosis that he could get.
Cyst.
Yeah, so they apparently dug and couldn't find the dermoid cyst. So they said we had to leave it. And okay, fine. But they burned a ton of endometriosis off. It wasn't super severe, but he only burned what he could see from where he went in to look at the ovary. So I may have more and just not even know it. So I stayed home for 2 weeks from work. I think it was 2 weeks. Recovering from that emotionally and physically. I'd never had surgery before. So that was that. Pretty much. That was over. Had to go back to work, and I'm a teacher, and I had students who already knew, and so that's really hard to discuss with a child what happened. And I vividly remember a student. I'm a special ed teacher, so you have to keep that in mind. The ones that I'm talking to, there's just not a filter, and it just comes out, and they don't mean what they say sometimes until after they've said it. And vividly remember a student telling me that I killed the baby that was in my stomach. So I had to deal with many comments like that. I teach older students, so it was not easy going back to work. So we let a whole year pass. He told us we could start trying again immediately. So we let a whole year pass, and nothing happened. I went back and forth from timing to temping to every testing, everything you can think of. And it was just draining. So I go in for my yearly PAP, and I ask him, okay, it's been a year. What are the next steps? Where do we go from here to fill this hole? Well, let me back up because I forgot to put something on this little shindig here. We had genetic testing done because we wanted to know what was the reason the miscarriage happened. What were the issues? Is it something that we could have been prevented? Is there something wrong with the genetics between the two of us? And I wanted to know. I just wanted to know what happened, what went wrong. Just in the back of your mind, you blame yourself, but I just wanted to know. So it took a couple of months to get that back. Because it was December when he called me. And the baby had trisomy 16. And you can look that up on your own time. It's basically just an extra chromosome. And babies with trisomy 16 do not live usually past the first trimester. And they don't normally live as long as I carried. So anyways, and he did ask us if we wanted to know the gender. And I sort of jumped the gun and said yes, but I don't regret that either. I wanted to know, and it was a boy. And so he sent us to visit with was it a genetic counselor? Is that what she was called? I think so. At another hospital.
Something.
So we meet with this lady, and she went through everything and showed us, pretty much how genetics work, how they line up, and what it's supposed to look like, and what ours looked like, and asked if we had any questions, and she pretty much told us that there was a 1% chance that would ever happen again. Like, it wasn't something between our genes, it was just something super fluke and random, and sometimes things like that just happen, and she doesn't know why, but it just lined up the wrong way. So that was good news for us, because we knew that that particular scenario would not happen again as far as trisomy 16. Okay, so let a year go past, and I go in for my PAP, and I ask him what the next steps are. It's been a whole year since everything happened. We've been trying on our own, and nothing is working. I'm not seeing any results. So he tells me that I need to do all this testing so that we can start medicated cycles. So he tells me that you need a semen analysis, and that I need, what is it called? An HSG. I think that's right. And that I pretty much wait for my period to start, and then we call and we schedule all of those things. Well, that was in 2017, and that was right before we went on a cruise for Thanksgiving. So I was like, well, we'll just wait till we get back from the cruise, and then we'll do all of this testing. Well, my mom just wasn't settled with that. She wanted me to get another opinion just to make sure that we weren't missing something. I was like, okay, fine, I can do that. I can go talk to someone else and just see what they have to say. So I went to her new doctor, because that old man that accused my husband of being a drug addict was no longer a doctor. Imagine that. So I go to this new doctor, and I don't take anything with me. I don't take any records. I just want to tell her what is happening and see what we can do. So I sit down. I tell her everything, just like I'm from the beginning. And she said, we just need to start from scratch. Let me get my own ultrasounds, my own labs, and let's go from there. I said, this sounds great. She gives me medicine for headaches. I don't even have to do the ring around the rosy of why I need it, or the pain that I'm having, or, I don't prescribe pain medicine, all of this stuff. Sure, you can have it. So I go in a couple of days later, maybe a week later, and I have blood work done, and I have an ultrasound done, and they call me, and I had an appointment. As soon as you went with me, as soon as the ultrasound was done, I had an appointment with a doctor, the doctor that was there. So I go in for the ultrasound, and I have had so many ultrasounds. I know what it's supposed to look like. I know what the ovaries look like when they pop up on the screen. When you bleed like I was bleeding and you have all of them done, then you know exactly what to look for. Not an expert, I just know what it's supposed to look like. So it comes up on the screen. And the lady I had, I was asking questions. She said, the doctor's going to go over the whole scan with you. As soon as you leave in here, I'll take you to him. Well, that's not how my old doctor was. The ladies in the ultrasound part of the doctor's office at my old doctor spoke to you while you were having it done. They answered any questions. As soon as it was over, they sort of told you what they saw and what was going on, and this doctor's office just wasn't like that, and that's totally fine. So we go over to the doctor's office, and I tell Eric, I said, something's wrong. As soon as it came up on the screen, it looked like Swiss cheese. There were holes everywhere. Those are not follicles, healthy follicles. There were so many, and something's wrong. So we go into the doctor's office, and he says, so I've looked at your labs, and I've looked at your ultrasound, and he's probably said some other things more specific, but all I heard was you have PCOS. And he said, you look upset. So, of course, I start crying or tearing up at least. And I'm not someone who normally cries or gets upset. But I said, I already have things working against me like endometriosis. And he said, well, how do you know you have endometriosis? I had surgery and they removed it. And I have pictures of it inside of, I know that I have it. And now I have this on top of it. So he said, well, people who have a case similar to yours, they just jump right onto IVF. And I said, well, we can't afford that, so that's out of the question for now. He said, well, if money wasn't an option, is that a step you would be ready to take right now? I said, well, obviously. If you have the money, then you do, but we don't have that kind of money to throw out right this second. So, anyways, he gives me metformin. And it was 500 milligrams twice a day, so 1,000 milligrams a day to start taking. And, okay, fine, I have another diagnosis, but I have something that's going to help it. So I leave, and I take the metformin for almost for 5 months.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. I feel great. I feel so much better. I have more energy. I still have headaches, but they're not as frequent. I'm talking every single day headaches has been more like once a week maybe. I can handle that. I can take something real quick and it can be gone. I just felt better. I was dropping weight without even trying. I've always been a super small person, and over the last 5 years, I got up to 160 pounds. That's a lot for me. I'm only like 5'5". I'm not very tall. And I just didn't know I was working out sometimes 4 and 5 times a week. I was getting up and going to these boot camps, and I'm a teacher. I'm on my feet all day long. I was watching what I was eating. I was counting the calories. I was stopped drinking so much. I was just packing on no matter what I did. So I started taking the metformin, and I dropped a ton of weight. Not super fast, but just started going off and leveling out finally. So I decide something happened with the insurance. The hospital wasn't taking my insurance at the time. It was just a weird situation, and I thought, well, they suggested, now that I was on the metformin, to still go through with the test, the HSG and the semen analysis. And the doctor told this guy, because the doctor's office was like an hour away, hour and a half away, it's far. He said, well, after the semen analysis, and I said, well, we live kind of far, so how's that going to work? You know, it's time sensitive, it's got to be a certain temperature, blah, blah, blah. The doctor tells this guy that he needs to do it in the parking lot and bring the sample inside. I can just see a little old lady walking by while he's collecting his sample. So weird. So I'm like, okay, this guy's freaking crazy.
And he said it would be fun.
Yeah, he said, oh, that'll be fun and exciting. Like,
something new.
Oh,
yeah, get arrested.
God. It was so weird. So we were sort of, that doctor was kind of clashing with the other doctor. Now we're back on the same page. Yes, I have a new diagnosis, but they're both said that I needed the exact same thing. So I decided to go to the doctor that's closest, back to the doctor that handled my miscarriage. So I called them, and I called the nurse, and this doctor's nurse is amazing. And I just said, if you have a minute, I need to catch you up. And she said, yep, go ahead. I'm listening. So I'll tell her everything that happened at the other doctor about the PCOS and about me taking metformin, and that I was ready to take the next steps, and I needed an appointment just to fill him in. So she said, okay, are you back with us for good? Like, yes, I've switched like 5 times, but this is the best doctor I've been to, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. So we go in, and he says, okay, the next step is for medicated cycles. And I know that we said that we needed to do these tests, but because all of those tests are going to measure things that we know work. You were pregnant. You did get pregnant. And that means that the tubes are clear. They were clear just a year and a half ago. Well, now it's been more like 2 years, but this point, he said it's been, just a little over a year and a half. So those tubes should still be cleared. I burned all the endometriosis off that I could see. You did get pregnant, so all of that worked. So we're going to pass those tests for now. Let's do a couple of cycles, medicated cycles, and then if still nothing, then we'll go back and we'll do the test. It's like, this sounds amazing. So I left that day with I need to back up. Kuja. So after I started taking the metformin, I'm going to have to edit this a little bit. Started taking the metformin. They also wanted me to do the dye test and the semen analysis, which we talked about in the parking lot, Lord. So I scheduled the HSG, and I start bleeding. So I call them and I schedule it, and they tell me that I can't be bleeding when I have it. So I called them the day of, and I said, I'm still bleeding. What do you want me to do? And they said, well, we're going to have to cancel it. The doctor won't do it if you're bleeding too heavy. Well, I never know when my cycle is going to stop. Sometimes I'll spot for 5 days and I'll bleed for a week, and I don't know like when it's going to stop. Sometimes I only have like a week between stopping bleeding and starting a new cycle. I don't ever know. So I switch and I go back to my doctor that handled my miscarriage, and I fill them in on everything that's happened, and they ask me if I'm going to stay there for good, because I've switched like 4 or 5 times. So I go in, and he says, the next step is to start some medicated cycles, and let's see what it looks like. So he decides that I can bypass the dye test that was canceled on me, and the semen analysis for now. And then after a couple of cycles, if we don't have any results, then we will go back and do those tests to see if there's any issues. But he said that he would approve for me to do a couple of rounds and just see what happens. So I left that day with Clomid, and I was so excited. The only problem was, because my periods are so irregular, I had already spotted for like 5 days, and then I started bleeding, so we really didn't know what was considered cycle day 1. So we just said, okay, today at the appointment, cycle day 1, start the medicine today. Okay, great. You don't really hear people taking it days 1 through 5 and whatever, but I was like, got to start somewhere, because I don't know what day it is. With all of the spotting and bleeding and back and forth, I don't know. So I take Clomid for 5 days, and I go in for a scan. They mail me my trigger shot, my HCG trigger shot, to take with me to the appointment. We go for the appointment. They do the ultrasound. As soon as she puts it in, you can see the follicles, and I'm looking at the numbers, and at that time, I sort of knew what I was looking for, but she was going so fast, I couldn't count how many, and I couldn't see the sizes. And anyways, I ended up having one that was ready right that second, and I had 3 others?
3 others.
3 others that were about to be ready. So I had 4 total that were going to be ready in the next day or so, a couple of days. So my doctor wasn't there. So I had to see another doctor that was in the office, and did not like him at all. He was just kind of like, well, you brought the shot with you, you paid for it, we'll just give it to you. But you got a spot on your ovary, and it looks like it's something called endometriosis. And I'm like, yeah, I already have that. If you had read the computer, you would have known that. And he said, well, it looks like a spot of blood, and, it's how do you know you have endometriosis? Okay, here we go again. I have had it burned out. I know. I have a surgical diagnosis of it. Well, you paid for the shot, so we're going to give it to you, and we'll just see what happens. Like, things were just like bursting the bubble, the excitement that I had and when they called me from the waiting room, just like, all right, Jessica Thompson, you have a beautiful follicle. And I'm like, yes, I know. I'm so excited. I saw it on the screen, blah, blah, blah. And then this douchebag of a doctor just crushes everything that I was hoping for. So anyways, they give me the shot, and we decide that we're going to just try that round on our own and see what happens. So I think that we did a pretty good job. It's like 3 days straight. And then we left on a trip. We went to Oregon and saw the redwoods, and it was gorgeous, and we had the best time. That so helped with the 2-week wait of waiting it out. And I tested out my trigger, which was really weird, because I got a positive all the way up until 13 days past my trigger. And they said, if you have a positive on 14 days past your trigger, it's a true positive, then you just call us. I'm like, oh, wow, it's 13 days. There's no way that this line is going to go away by tomorrow. Well, sure enough, we got a little too excited, I think, and celebrated just a little bit. And the next morning rolled around, and I took a test, and when I wiped, I had started my period, sure enough. So that was super devastating. So I waited a day, I spotted a day, and then I started bleeding like that same day. was so weird. Normally I spot for a whole week and then I bleed for a whole week or two and then I don't have a period and then it starts all over. But I spotted for like not quite a day and then I had a period, like a real period. I was cramping, not super bad, but I was actually bleeding like I was supposed to on the day that it was supposed to come. So I call the doctor and I tell him, you know, starting my period, what's the next step? I feel like the cycle's going to be better because it started the way it's supposed to. So they call in Clomid round 2. He does not change the dosage, still at 50 milligrams for 5 days because it worked. I had follicles. Just think that the timing was wrong on the days. So she tells me to take the Clomid round 2. But take it because I know the true days. Take it on days 5 through 9. Like, okay, that's way later than what I took last time. But we're going to see. So I took it for 5 days. And I got my trigger shot in the mail yesterday. And my appointment was in the morning to scan for follicles. Fingers crossed that they are there. So that is my entire story up until right this second. And the only other thing that I can say that has been, other than watching other videos and other couples go through this, has been super helpful. I was the very first person in my circle of friends to get pregnant. And today I'm the only person in my circle of friends that does not have a baby. That has been the hardest part. And I'm sure I have crushed some friendships by not attending baby showers or not sending a congratulations message. That's not easy. And I don't know that it will ever be easy, even if I do get pregnant. So that is it. And when I get done with my appointment tomorrow, I will do a quick video to sort of update if I have any follicles. Maybe the timing is right. Maybe this will be a short-lived infertility journey. I don't know. But this entire thing of notes is just growing every single day, and it is not easy. So, have I forgotten anything? I don't know either. It's just been really long. So I'm going to edit this and get it posted, and I hope that my story can help others. And I'm going to add to it, and we'll just see how it goes. We're pretty crazy and a lot of fun, but this has definitely been a tough road to go down. And I can say that it has only made us stronger. I think it's not been easy for either one of us, and we've handled it in our own way, but we have some really supportive families, so we'll see. Alright, I'm going to make a cool intro for this, and we'll just see how this goes. If you have some super judgmental comments, you can just back right on out, because I don't want to hear them. Alright, we'll see you later. Bye!